How's it going, my peeps? It's your boy Steve-O. I'm just kidding, it's just Steve. Just recorded some of this and it didn't do the audio, so that was convenient. Let's try this again. So I have a friend that was looking to get some editing rigs, or an editing rig for themselves, and wanted to know some pricing options available to them. So I thought I'd make a video for them to kind of show them options that are available out there if they wanted to build it themselves. I'm not sure if they're going to want to go that path. It's definitely going to be a fun journey for them if they do. They do not have any knowledge whatsoever of computer building, so I might have to do a lot of it for them, but you know, that's the fun of everything we do, right? Educating and teaching and showing everybody things. Alright, this is the page I want. Okay, so a lot of the systems I kind of built them around Puget Systems' way of doing things. I thought they have a very solid path of doing things. They are incredibly detailed and really good at understanding what people's needs are. They are a little bit pricey. I built a similar priced system. Let's see, this was the i9 variant, I believe. The only difference is I did a mechanical drive instead of an SSD, just so we can have more storage, but I got priced at $2,300. So if you want to spend an extra $1,000 and plus change, Puget Systems is very robust in terms of what they have options for. They do a lot of detailed work. They make sure that the system is completely ready to be shipped when you buy it, which is awesome. The other thing I thought was really interesting that they did was they have these little brackets here that are support brackets, and then they have one for the graphics card as well. On their 3080 build, the graphics one is a lot more robust and bigger. I think that's mostly to help with shipping, to be honest, because this literally gets mounted to the top of the case, so that's fantastic. It could help with CPU sag, which can happen, especially with that big of a cooler. But I just thought that was an interesting add-on that they did. So yeah, let's go over some of the builds. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize that was cut off a little bit. Anyways, so let's go ahead and close that. So yeah, I made an i7, which was kind of the budget one. So the Core i7 is the budget system I've created for them. I built a i9 version and then a couple AMD ones, which are the higher end ones. This 3950 I would recommend seeing if you can get the 5000 series, just because it's the newest one. And then obviously a Threadripper. You could do the 32 core, but I figured for the price to performance, the 24 core should be just enough, more than enough for what you're probably going to be needing it for. Alright, so for the i7 build, this one was priced at $1,598. Where did I go? There it is. $1,598, which is a pretty solid system, like all around, for gaming or anything you could possibly want. What I did was, okay, so there we go. So I did the 9700K because it was $100 cheaper than the 10,000 series. So I figured that was a pretty awesome deal right now. A standard Noctua cooler obviously can do anything else you wanted, but I know that these things are solid, easy to install, and won't have any pump problems, period. Those fans will run forever, I swear. I had my last case where I had one in there, and that thing ran for 6 years, and it's still running today. I donated it to someone, but anyways. I did an Asus Prime board. It's clean, has plenty of features in it. I think the only downside with this one is it might not have it's not going to have Wi-Fi built in. So that's a bummer, but it's got plenty of other neat features with it. Sorry, I'm just making sure. Yeah, it doesn't have any Wi-Fi support, which you could get a higher end board for like another $100 or so and have that feature, but I figured I'd try to cut costs as much as I could. I just did a standard 32 gigs of RAM. I don't recommend doing 16, especially if you're thinking about doing streaming and game streaming and stuff like that. I did a 1 terabyte just standard drive. It's the Evo series of Samsung. I've had really good luck with Samsung drives, and so I kind of stuck with them because of that. Evo is their slower performance, but really good value. That's why it's $129. The graphics card, I just did a 3070. The reason why I chose PNY was just because they actually had a price listed. There was no other reason besides that. And then just a standard power supply. The way I usually choose power supplies is I look at the estimated wattage for the system. PC Part Picker is really good about this, but the estimated wattage is 450. So I usually just make sure I get 25% more roughly of what I need. Since most of these are 80 plus efficiency, that means that it could be less efficient by up to 20%. That way, if anything weird happens, you have enough headroom, or for some reason your overclocks are able to draw a little bit more power, you're not going to have to worry. Or if you wanted to add more like mechanical drives for some really strange reason. But yeah, $1,500 or $1,600 for this system. You could definitely look for some deals, but I just grabbed some pretty generic parts. NZXT case is $70. You could definitely go cheaper than that if you wish. I've seen cases as cheap as $40 that work just fine. So there's that one. The ideal candidate that I am recommending is the i9 version. One is because Intel's had a lot more R&D put into Adobe products and things like that. I mean, though Threadripper has definitely bridged that gap quite a bit. I did a Strix board on this one, so you could use Wi-Fi, but like I said, it's like $100 more than the other one. I bumped this one up to 64 gigs of RAM just because if you're going to be, in order to utilize the full 10 cores of this with the hyper threading, having that extra RAM is definitely going to come in handy, especially if you're going to be doing like 4K footage. I did a similar storage setup. However, if you wanted to, you could do like a drive and then a 500 gigabyte drive like I did on some of the other ones. So you could do a 500 gig boot drive and then that's really fast, and then like a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte Evo drive for a scratch disk, and then use a spinning drive for long-term storage if you wanted. Obviously there's no backup with this, so you need to consider that as an option. Then I did the 3080 just because it's only a $200 difference at retail. Good luck getting one though. Everybody is pretty much sold out at this point. And then I did a 850 watt power supply because of the estimated wattage was 608 watts. So I wanted a 200 watt buffer that I thought was pretty reasonable. So with this one, the grand total was $2,370. So that's $700 more for a lot more machine. I'd probably say upwards of 20 or 30% more performance at the very least, if not more. Especially if you did that hard drive upgrade that I was mentioning. If you wanted to swap out, do a little bit more configuration with this, just so you can have better configuration. Because with Puget Systems, the reason, I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but the reason why they had a scratch disk and then a OS disk is they found better performance with Photoshop or with Adobe products when using that. Plus, it's a little bit easier to manage your data that way. Being able to just toss an entire project somewhere else and then bring other files onto the cache drive. But yeah, this is definitely a good contender. The other one that I think is also a pretty good contender is this one, which is our AMD Ryzen build. 16 core monster. Like I said, you would want to probably see if you can get the 5000 series. They should be pretty close in price, probably within $100. Standard AMD or Asus Strix. I prefer Asus motherboards over Gigabyte and MSI. I feel like I've had better luck with them in terms of the BIOS settings and just overall software support. And then, like I said, with the hard drives, I did this combo of 500 gigabyte with a really fast drive, and then a 1 terabyte scratch disk. Essentially, it's a little bit slower drive. I might look into a little bit more research to figure out the best boot drives that are available out there, like in terms of speeds. But it's just a matter of just figuring that out. And then let's see, this one's 650 watts. So you probably could get away with a 850 watt power supply just fine, from what I'm seeing. The other thing I did on this one was it was 128 gigs of RAM, just because you might as well. I mean, if you want to, you could do 64 gigs today and then another 64 later, but because that would save you about $200. But I usually don't recommend mismatching RAM, possibly. But as long as you get the same speed and cast latency, you should be okay. But this one was 2927 compared to the other one, which was 2370. So I mean, let's see, that's another $800, right? A little bit lower than that, 750 around there. And you're getting a pretty solid build between the two. So if you want to go blue, I would definitely probably recommend the i9, because the i9 was $200 cheaper. I mean, $200 more expensive than the 10,000 series i7, and then $300 more expensive than the 9000 i7. So I think between those two things, it'd be great. And then the really monstrous one was the Threadripper build. I mean, it's a $1,500 processor, so it's pretty awesome. This is a standard 24 core. They have a 32, but I wasn't sure if it was gonna be worth it. I did have to upgrade the CPU cooler. I just did a liquid cooler just so I can make sure I have enough cooling, because this is a really hot chip. I mean, just look at the CPU socket. That's like double the size of a standard one. The other thing you get upgraded with this one is more RAM slots, so you could do 128 gigs today and then double it later on if you needed it for some strange reason. But yeah, there's tons of performance out of this board. They have a slightly cheaper one, slightly cheaper motherboard that you could do. I think it's this one. So this one was... Wait, these aren't the right ones. Anyways, it was like it was a $500 board, I think, is what I was seeing before. So I figured you might as well be spending the extra money and then get your money's worth, so you can have those extra memory slots and extra bandwidth, PCI lanes for bandwidth and things like that. I did a standard 128 gigs. I really don't think you'll need more than 128 gigs for RAM these days for Photoshop, but with 8 DIMM slots, you're gonna have, you can double it easily, so that's nice. Storage, I did a scratch disk with 2 terabytes instead of the 1, and then 500 gig for the primary drive. You could upgrade this to 1 terabyte if you wanted to, but I didn't see a reason for that. Especially if your games are all going to the scratch disk anyways. Like, there's no real reason to, unless you want to go nuts and spend an extra couple $100, because it is the Pro drive, which has faster speeds. Also, because of this being a really big motherboard, especially an extra large one, I had to go with a bigger case. And then I don't think you'll need a 1200 watt power supply, but I did a 1200 watt instead of 1000 because of or the estimated wattage was 850, which is insane to see, but it is what it is. I guess you could do a 3090, but I didn't see a point in spending that extra $300 unless you wanted to go nuts. But yeah, this one was $4,025. So I basically got every price point almost. So if you want to go absolutely nuts, do the 4000 machine. I really like the Fantex cases because they're really versatile. This one in particular, instead of having a solid front, it has a mesh front, so that'll allow lots of airflow into the sucker. Something cool is this little side piece right here, so you can put your graphics card sideways. I've heard of people having issues with having a Gen 4 PCI lane going to an extender, which would be required. That's Gen 3, and then a Gen 4 card being plugged into it until the BIOS and stuff has been updated properly. Sometimes you won't get video feed. So just be wary that could be a potential problem if you wanted to use these slots. But the nice about these slots is that it's 3 slots wide. So anyways, so it's 3 slots wide, so it'd fit any 3080 standard card. There are some 4-slot cards nowadays, so you might have to be wary of that. But the nice thing about it being sideways is that the weight of the graphics card will be against the bottom of the case instead of having potential CPU sag that might happen. So that'll definitely help support the card more. One other final note about storage. When you start getting into the AMD line across both of them, you might start considering it with the i9. So you could, with the AMD, you'd probably recommend it, but with i9 it might be a little bit of a stretch just because you're usually trying to cut costs with the i9. Just scrolling back down and kind of show pricing, is a network attached server of some sort. So some of these ASUS boards, I would probably need to research it a little bit more. I'm pretty confident that the i9 one has the more speed. I'm not sure if this particular motherboard has it, but they have the slightly faster Ethernet. It will make a huge difference if you're just a single user, but if you're wanting to transfer files to it while you're like gaming and stuff, that might cause some performance dips. But having a network attached storage of some sort would make it so that you could have backups for your data at the very least, or possible just long-term storage to transfer back and forth between your computer and it. That way you don't have to worry about, hey, if my computer crashed, what do I do? Or hey, the hard drive decided to fail, what do I do? So with the network attached storage, you can get like a 4-bay one that holds like two or like 4 hard drives, and then you can distribute your data across that pretty easily. I'll be doing a video on that pretty soon. I've been using a HP server server. Sorry. Enterprise mini server that runs on about 60 watts most of the time because it's typically idling, not doing a whole lot. So I only have 2 users that are really hitting most of the day. So look forward to that. But that was kind of just my thoughts and on builds for at least Adobe products like Photoshop work and stuff like that. I think either the Ryzen 9 or the i9 would be perfect for most people. Just a matter of preference and what you want to do with your computer and how much what your storage needs and possibly RAM needs. The reason why I like the on the i9 one, I did 64 gigs, but it was only 2 sticks of 32, so that if for some reason in a couple months you're like, oh, I actually do need more, then I can bump it up. So you could do that with the other one. You'd be dropping it by about $200, so that'd be an easy way to drop the price down a little bit. Actually, that'd bring it pretty much right next to each other. I would almost just do the AMD one, but I'm gonna have to research the performance differences, see if it's worth the risk of having to do that, and what some of the other people are using it editing wise. Because I typically am just using my Mac, just because I have 2 older Macs I got for free, and I have Final Cut already. Those usually meet my needs in terms of editing and stuff like that, because they're fast enough and they're not dying yet. So anyways, best of luck with your guys' shopping. I would definitely suggest using PC Part Picker for finding parts, just because they give you really good pricing and the data behind the pricing, so if it's gone up or not. That way you don't get screwed over for Christmas and stuff like that. And then Puget Systems, if you're really just like, you know what, I don't care about my budget, Puget Systems has tons of systems, and they also have tons of articles. So anyways, best luck with your shopping and finding of things. Computers are so complex to try and sift through.